Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Dev with Excel. Alright, so in this video we shall be solving exercise 3.10, which is the step 10 of the phone book backend. Right, so in this exercise we are going to be deploying the backend to the internet. Now, which backend do we need to deploy to the internet? We need to deploy the backend we solved in the previous exercise, that's exercise 3.9. Now, in exercise 3.9, we saw how we could integrate both backend and frontend together, right? Now, the backend created is what we want to deploy to the internet with a little change, right? So we are going to be making some little changes to the code base. All right, so let's head into the code implementation. So here is my VS code, and then this is what we have. This is my setup folder for the entire part, right? So here we can see that in part 3, in the last exercise, we solved exercise 3.9, which is a step 9. So this is the setup folder I have for this current exercise, right? So we are going to be using this folder for this exercise and also for the next exercise, which is exercise 3.11, right? Okay, so this folder here it's just a duplicate of what we have in step 9 currently. So we are going to be making a few changes to it. All right, so clicking on this, we have this, right? So here what we need to do is we need to just make some little changes to it. Going to the material, let's see what the material says. There's a part where the material suggests what should be done. So let's just scroll to that point and see what we need to change in that code. All right, so in this part here, it says, we notice now from the logs that the app has been started in the port 10,000. The app code gets the right port through the environment variable port. So it is essential that the file index.js has been updated in the backend as follows, right? So we are simply going to copy this entire code, right? So let's copy everything and then let's paste it into our code here, right? So I am going to be explaining to us exactly what this means. So for the ports, we simply leave this port here, and then we cut this, and then we use it to replace what we have here before. Okay, now let me simply just explain this. Here we we had coded the port number, right? 3001. We placed it in here directly, right? And here the log here says server is running successfully. But here we don't want this to be this way. We want it in such a way that when the log shows, it should show server running on ports, on whatever port this port variable is, right? So let's just remove this. We don't need this for now. Now we define this port here. This is the point where we define the ports, right? So here we have const port equals process.m.port or 3001. Now what this means here, process.m.port, means is that should in case we have a .m file in our code base, right, and a port variable is defined and then a port number is given to this port variable, right, that port number should be assigned to this variable port. And if we don't have a .env, or if we have a .env with no port variable defined, then we simply use 3000. So this 3000 will be assigned to this same port variable. And then that port variable we have up there is what we have here. And when we run the server, we should see server running on port 3001. Again, if you have a .env file and your port number is not 3001, let's say it's something else, let's say it's 3002, when you run the server, what you are going to be getting is server running on port 3002, right? But as we can see in this case, we don't have a .env file yet. We don't need it for now. So let's run this folder. So let's simply copy its path and let's cd into it. So we cd into this path and then we say npm run dev. So while it is running, we want to ensure that this code works up until this point, right? So what we want to do is we are going to be testing our endpoints using a thunder client. So we used this thunder client before and we saw how it was, and we saw how we could actually use it, right? So let's see if we can perform a get request. So let's click get send here. Okay, it says connection was refused by the server. Okay, so why is this happening this way? Let's click it again. Um, let's go back to our code. Something may be wrong. All right, so here we have this. Okay, let's be very sure that the index.js we are running is this. So let's just close this index.js. Let's click on this, and then let's be sure that we have step 10, 11. Okay, so let's close this, and then let's run it again. Okay, so this is not right, right? This is not the correct endpoint to be used. We are supposed to have the port number also. That's 3001. So let's click this. So we can see we have all the data returned, right? Also, if we try to make a post request, we are not going to be testing all of the requests, right? So let's also just try for a post request. Let's add dev with excel 08901. Let's see if this works. And again, we need to add the port number here as well. All right, so we can see that we have dev with excel with ID 180. All right, so this shows that our code works properly, right? Now, there is something we need to note. When deploying, we are not going to be deploying this folder, right? Because this entire folder setup, right, has its own Git initialization, right? So we can't deploy just this folder out of this whole Git initialization, right? So to avoid Git issues, what we can do is we can create a separate repo on our GitHub, and then we push these files to that repo. And that's where we are going to be doing our deployments from. All right, so let's go to the repo now, to our GitHub, and then let's create a new repo. And here I am going to be calling it FullStackOpen, that's FSO, YouTube, that's YT, and I call it step 10 and 11. So we can see this is available. Then we check that add a readme file. So we create this repo. All right, so now we have this repo created, right? We just one file inside of it, that's a readme file. Then what we want to do next is we want to clone this repo. So going to the SSH, we copy the link, and then I'll simply go to my git bash. So here, what I'll do is I'm simply going to clone this folder, right? So I'm simply going to clone this folder. This link we just copied here, it contains this repo, right? So we say git clone, and then I'll simply just paste it. And then it's cloning to my desktop because I have already navigated to my desktop folder, right? So we are going to be seeing this folder in the desktop. All right, so going to my desktop, we can see this is the folder that we just cloned, right? And if we open it, we can see that it has just the readme file and also the git initialization file, right? So now what we need to do is we need to copy or push this entire folder, this entire files here. We need to copy them and then put them into the new folder we have here, right? Now, you might not do yours this way, right? But the idea is that we want to create a new repo for that exercise. That's the idea, right? So you can do yours in your own way, right? You understand how you interact with your folders and your GitHub, right? So to copy these files here, I'll simply just go to the folder where they exist, which is this folder. I'm going to navigate into it. That's part 3, phone book backend, step 10, 11. Then I'll copy everything I have here, right? And then I'm simply going to paste them here. So let's just chill while it's copying. All right, I think that is done. So we have all the files here, right? So when you go to the VS Code, we see that we have, okay, yes. So we have all the files, and now we need to load this particular folder on the VS Code, right? So that we can commit to the GitHub, right? So we need to populate the repo we have on the GitHub with this newly inserted files and folder, right? So what we can do here is in the VS Code, we can just create a new window, and then we can just drag this folder into that new repo. And again, yours might not work this way, right? You might not have to do yours this way. Okay, that didn't successfully work. Let's do that again. Okay, so here we can see that this is our new folder, right? And it contains all the newly copied files. So the next thing we want to do is let's stop running this server here so that we won't run into issues, right? Now I think we are done with this folder now, with this set folder, right? So we are now concerned with this newly created repo, right? Now what we want to do is um we need to push this to our GitHub. Currently, this is what we have in the GitHub, just the README file. But also we need to push all of these files to the GitHub. So as we can see, we have the index.js, which contains the changes we made. And when we scroll down to the part we listen to the server, we can see we have these changes here also, right? And also in our package.json, we have the stats, which is in node index.js. So this is also very important to have, right? Make sure you have this in your scripts, right? Okay. And also this is the readme we have, right, from the GitHub here. Okay. So now what we need to now do is I'll simply just go to my git bash here to do the necessary committing, right? So let's do that now. So as we can see, we have main here. So there's something I love to do. I love to create new branches, right? So I'll simply just, first of all, I will just check the status of the repo. Okay, so we are on main, and then I'll simply just switch to a new branch and I call it dev. All right, so from here, I'll just add all the files we have, and then I commit them with a message. So I could just say setup folder for backend deployment. Then I hit enter. Then now it's time to push. So I'll simply just push this dev. All right, so let's just hold on for it while it's trying to push. All right, so that is successful. So let's go back to our GitHub and then let's merge that. Now, this is just the way I like doing it. You don't have to do yours this way. All right. So the main thing is for us to understand how to deploy the backend application. All right. It's checking for ability to merge automatically. Okay, so I have that ability and I confirm the merge. So I can just delete my branch because I don't need it anymore for now. So when we go back to the repo, we can see that we have the files right now added to the repo we have. Right now, this is the repo to be deployed. Right, this is the repo to be deployed. Okay, all right. So having done this, the next thing we want to do is want to go to, okay, going back to the material. Here we are given two options whereby we can deploy. So we are asked to use either the fly.io or render, right? Also, if you have any other deployment services that you can use it as well. But this is a recommendation from this material, right? They also recommended that if you have any other deployment service you could use to, right? So it doesn't have to be fly.io or render. It could be any other deployment services, you know. But I'm going to be using render, right? Okay, so here this is render, right? As we can see, render.com. So I'll simply just come here and then click on get started for free. So that should open up. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to click on new and then click on web service. Then after that, we are going to select this, but it's automatically selected for us, right? We want to build and deploy from a Git repository. So we click on next, then we scroll down. Here it says public Git repository. So here we are going to copy the link to our repo. So going back to the repo, you can see that this is the link here, right? So we just copy this and then come back to this part and then we paste it here. So we click on continue. So that is trying to load. Now, this is the name we want to give our deployed application, right? And as we can see, it's working with Node and the npm install is here. And also we have node index.js. So going back to our code, we can see that in our code, when we go to the package.json, we have node index.js, right? So this is also very important to have in your code, right? Now, if you only have node the deployment will have issues, right? Because nodemon is just a dev dependency library, right? All right, so what we want to do is as we can see, we have starter, pro max. You can choose to click on any one of these if you want to pay, right? But if you want it for free, just click on this free, right? And then this part, we select this part if we have .m files, but right now we don't have any .m file in our project, right? So we just go ahead to click on create web service. So this is going to create, is going to begin to build the entire application for us, right? So this is the process of trying to host the application online. And as you can see here, this is the link that we use to, this is the online link, right? So this is more like the website. Okay, all right. So let's give it some time while it's in progress. So the build is in progress. All right, so let's go back to the instruction to see if there are other things we need to do. Okay, so it says test the deployed backend with a browser and Postman or VS Code Rise client to ensure it works. Okay, so we are going to try that. Also, it says create a README at the root of your repository. Okay, so when the deployment is true, we are going to test the link we have, right, with the Thunder client we have. So you can test yours with the browser, with your browser or your Postman or VS Code REST client. But since I've been using Thunder client, I'm simply going to test mine with Thunder client, right? So, all right, so our application is live now, right? So we can just copy this link and then let's open a new tab and then let's paste the link here. Let's see if this link is going to work. Okay, now it's giving us error, right? So the reason for this error is because we need to add the endpoints we have, right, from our code. Okay, so going back to our code in the index.js, let's see the endpoints we worked with. Let me just minimize this. So here we can see that to actually get the data, we need to use this endpoint. That's the APIs, the slash API slash persons, right? So going back to the application, the deployed application, we are simply going to add that to this place, right? So we have slash API slash person. Now let's click on enter and see if that returns the data for us. Okay, so here we can see we have the data deployed for us, right? So we have everything in our code returned for us here, right? Similarly, we have another endpoint here that is slash info. Let's see if this also works. So let's remove this slash API slash persons and simply just put slash info. All right, so it says phone book has info for 4 people, right? So since it works here, it should also work in the Thunder client. So I may not have to go to the Thunder client to test this anymore. All right, so I think with this, we've been able to successfully solve this exercise. Let's go back to the instruction to check what we've not done. Okay, so it says create a readme.md at the root of your repository and add a link to your online application to it. Okay, so what we need to do now is we simply just come to this link here and copy this. We copy this link, right? And then we go to our code. Then inside the readme of our code here, we simply just place that link. And then we could just call it link to deployed application or deployed backend, right? To deployed backend application. Okay, so something like this, right? So we save this and then we need to push this back to GitHub so that we can submit that on the submission system. So let's push this back to GitHub. So let's check the status again. So we can see that the readme here is now modified. So let's add it. So I love to do git add dot, which is not really the best, right? Because you don't want to add everything you have in that project, right? But I understand that this is the only changes I have and the project is not large, right? So the next we want to do is you want to commit again and then you want to push. So this is trying to push again, and then let's go back to our GitHub and then let's merge the commits we just made. Okay, create pull request, checking for ability to merge automatically. Okay, so we merge this pull request, we confirm it, and then we delete this branch. Now, when we click on this repo and we go to the README, we should see that we have the link, right? So when you submit this repo to the FullStackOpen submission system, this should be properly submitted, right? Okay, so at this point, I think we've come to the end of this exercise 3.10. Should in case there's anything that we missed out, you may have to check it, but I don't think there's anything we missed out, right? All right, so see you in the next video. That's exercise 3.11. Bye.